Picture this. You're sitting in a barbershop chair, there's a warm towel on your face. The guy behind you has a straight razor, a steady hand, and has been doing this for 20 years. You're looking in a mirror. There's product. There are scissors that cost more than your phone. And you're still stressed out about whether he's going to mess up your fade. Now here's what I want you to think about. For roughly 99.9% of human history, that's 300,000 years by the way, none of that existed. No mirrors, no scissors, no steel, no appointment. No chairs with the little footrests. And here's the part nobody talks about. Your ancestors didn't just tolerate their hair, they managed it. Actively, obsessively, actually. Because if they didn't just look bad, they got eaten, they got sick, they froze to death with ice forming directly on their skin. So today we're answering the question nobody thinks to ask. How did ancient humans actually deal with their hair? And what they came up with is, honestly, more impressive than anything you'll find at that barbershop. First, let's kill the myth. You know the image. You've seen it in every movie, every cartoon, every Halloween costume. The caveman with the massive tangled mane and the huge wild beard down to his chest, like he just woke up from a million-year nap. That's not what was happening. Think about what your average day looked like 30,000 years ago. You wake up before sunrise. You spend the next several hours tracking an animal through dense brush. You need to be moving, crouching, freezing in place, throwing things with precision. You're not sitting at a desk. Every single thing you do requires your full physical attention. Now imagine doing all of that with hair that falls into your eyes every time you lean forward. There's a reason hunters across cultures, across thousands of years and thousands of miles apart, all independently figured out. You tie your hair back, you cut it short, or you're going to miss the throw. And when you miss the throw, your family goes to sleep hungry. That's the hunting problem. But it gets worse. Because unmanaged hair, we're talking genuinely matted, never touched since birth hair, is basically a 5-star hotel for parasites. Lice, ticks, mites. We actually know this for a fact because scientists have found evidence of head lice in human remains going back thousands of years. The oldest louse egg ever found on a human was stuck to a hair from a 10,000-year-old body in Brazil. And genetic research tells us lice have been riding along with us since before we were even fully human, over 1 million years. These things are not new. And in the days before medicine, a serious scalp infection from an untreated infestation wasn't just uncomfortable, it could kill you. Then there's the cold problem. And this one genuinely surprised me when I read about it. If your ancestors were living through a Paleolithic winter, and some of these winters were brutal, full ice age conditions, a massive unkempt beard wasn't rugged. It was dangerous. Here's why. Every time you breathe out, moisture from your breath condenses on your facial hair. In sub-zero temperatures, that moisture freezes, directly on your skin. The longer and denser the beard, the more it happens, the closer the ice gets to your face. You end up with frostbite, actual tissue damage, on your cheeks and chin. From your own beard, cave paintings in modern-day Ukraine from around this period, they show men with short stubble. Not wizard beards. Short stubble. Because they'd figured out that facial hair needed to be managed to survive the cold. So the question isn't, did ancient humans groom themselves? The question is, how? Okay, this is the part where it gets genuinely wild. The go-to tool was a stone, specifically obsidian and flint. Here's a fact that I genuinely could not believe when I first read it. A freshly knapped flake of obsidian, volcanic glass, creates an edge that is sharper than a modern surgical scalpel. We're talking molecularly thin, a few molecules across. Some surgeons still use obsidian blades for delicate procedures today because they produce a cleaner cut with less tissue trauma than steel. So when a Paleolithic human picked up a piece of obsidian, snapped it to get a fresh edge, and used it to scrape along their face, they weren't using a crude, rough tool. They were using something extraordinarily sharp. Painful? Probably, but effective. Flint worked similarly. It has a structure called cryptocrystalline, basically meaning the individual crystals are microscopic, which lets it be knapped into edges that rival glass. But not everyone lived near volcanic rock or good flint deposits. So they improvised. Coastal populations used clamshells. And this is where it splits into two techniques. You could use the edge of a single shell like a razor scraping along the skin. Or, and this is the one that hurts to think about, you could press two shells together like a pair of tweezers and pull hairs out one at a time, at the root. There's documentation of this method being used by tribal cultures well into recorded history. Just imagine it. Hair by hair. There was also fire. Cave paintings show figures with no visible beards, and one explanation researchers have offered is singeing. using a burning ember or small flame to burn hair to a shorter length. It's quick. It doesn't require a tool. It leaves behind a faint smell of smoke that, as a side benefit, repels insects. You can actually do this today. People who work with fire regularly know that hair singes long before it catches properly. And then there were combs. This is the archaeological proof that seals it. Archaeologists have found bone, antler, and ivory combs at Paleolithic sites going back tens of thousands of years. These are deliberately crafted, shaped objects made from difficult materials requiring real effort to produce. Nobody carves a comb out of bone by accident, and a comb tells you something important. Somebody was detangling their hair, separating strands, keeping it manageable. That is not the behavior of a species that didn't care about its hair. Now here's where I want you to shift gears because this is the part of the story most people miss entirely. There's a small statue that was found in Austria in 1908. She's carved out of limestone about 4 inches tall, and she's been dated to roughly 30,000 years ago. She's called the Venus of Willendorf, and on her head, carved in careful detail, are rows of what appear to be braids. Now, archaeologists debate exactly what those ridges represent. Some say braids, some say a woven cap, some say a hair treatment made of clay. But here's what's not debated. Whatever is on that head was deliberately styled. It required attention, effort, and skill to depict. The sculptor thought it was worth capturing in stone. Here's why that matters. You cannot braid your own hair in a complex pattern without a mirror. Try it. You can do something basic in the front, sure. But the kind of structured, symmetrical braiding you see represented in Paleolithic figurines, including the Venus of Brassempouy in France, about 25,000 years old, which also shows a gridded hairstyle. That requires someone else doing it. Which means grooming was social. And scientists who study primate behavior have a term for this: allogrooming. In primates, chimpanzees, baboons, monkeys, grooming each other is one of the primary ways they build and maintain relationships. It establishes trust. It signals alliance. Research shows that primates who groom individuals of higher social rank gain tolerance and access to resources. The grooming is less about hygiene and more about politics. Humans didn't stop doing this when we lost our fur. We adapted it. When someone in your tribe sat down and braided your hair, they were spending time on you. They were investing in you. They were saying, you belong here. And when you walked into a new camp with a hairstyle that matched your group's style, strangers could read it immediately. Before you said a word, your hair was broadcasting your tribe, your status, your affiliation. Hair wasn't fashion. Hair was communication. The other thing they used was ochre mixed with animal fat. Red clay, ground fine, blended with rendered animal fat to make a paste that could be combed through hair. This would keep it slicked back during a hunt, protect the scalp from sun exposure, and, because ochre has natural antibacterial and insect-repelling properties, it likely helped with the lice problem too. They found evidence of ochre being processed and used going back at least 70,000 years in southern Africa. Some of it almost certainly ended up in hair. So, here's where we land. You're sitting in that barbershop chair. Warm towel. Mirror. Someone you've never met carefully shaping the edges of your appearance. And somewhere in the back of your brain, the ancient part. The part that was wired by 300,000 years of living in small groups on a dangerous planet. Something is satisfied. Not by the haircut exactly. By the fact that someone is doing it, that another person looked at you and said, you're worth the time. Primatologist Robin Dunbar has argued that human language itself may have evolved partly as a replacement for grooming, that we couldn't groom a tribe of 150 people one by one, so we developed conversation as a way to bond with more people at once. We went from picking lice out of each other's hair to telling each other stories around a fire. Hair grooming in that reading isn't something we graduated from. It's the root that everything else grew out of. Your ancestors didn't have a choice. They shaped each other's hair with volcanic glass and shells and fire because their lives depended on it. Not just from the parasites in the cold, but because belonging to the group was survival. Being seen, being tended to, being included, that was the difference between making it through winter and not. We think we go to the barbershop to look good. But that chair, that warm towel, that other person with their hands in your hair, your brain is running a 300,000-year-old program. It's asking the same question it's always asked. Do I belong? And the answer every time someone shows up with a pair of scissors is yes. If you want more of this, ancient humans doing surprisingly human things, hit subscribe. Every week we go back to where it all started, and I promise you, it is never boring.